Good morning. I'm Kristen Folletti, and welcome to News Desk on SiliconANGLE TV for Monday, July 8th, 2013. Is Motorola in cahoots with the NSA? A recent discovery by a security engineer may hold the answer to this question. Join us now to reveal details surrounding a privacy breach that may be affecting you. Is SiliconANGLE contributing editor John Casaretto. Good morning, John. Good to have you.
Good morning.
Beneath the Waves writer and security engineer Ben Lincoln recently wrote about a disturbing new discovery on the Motorola Droid X2 smartphone. In his editorial, Lincoln claims that Motorola is silently collecting personal info, including passwords, GPS data from photos, email addresses, and usernames, just to name a few. So, John, start us off by explaining how Lincoln uncovered the information that backs his claims.
Well, Lincoln's a security researcher. This is something that we do quite a bit. What he did was analyze the information that was being output by his phone. It's the kind of thing that you do in a security aspect when you're trying to find out, if there's been some kind of compromise or something like that. And this is really what turned up. And he made this discovery about this Android phone that he was using, the Motorola Droid X2. More on that later, but it's the phone he was using at the time, and he found that it was silently sending a bunch of data to Motorola, and to compound that problem, a lot of it was happening over an unencrypted HTTP channel. So very open transmission of data going back to Motorola, and then he was shocked to find the actual contents of that information that was being transmitted and how deep it went.
Along with silently sending that considerable amount of sensitive information to Motorola, Lincoln also discovered that the Droid X2 checks in with Motorola every 9 minutes. And that, as you just mentioned, the data is often sent over an unencrypted HTTP channel. So the privacy implications pretty obvious here, but explain to us why that backdoor method is of such great concern.
Well, first of all, the fact that it's unencrypted should kind of tell you everything. It's just transmitted wide open over the internet. But, it's the criticality of the data that's being grabbed. And I think that will actually grab most people's attention is that they're grabbing, as you discussed, social networking account data, the capturing the usernames, passwords for Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, photo bucket, all the photo upload information, that all the stuff that you upload, the file paths, email addresses. When you connect to your for the first time to exchange ActiveSync for your corporate email, it's grabbing the connection, DNS names, even stuff like missed calls, that kind of information. It's grabbing it and piping it back up to Motorola. So, the type of information over that kind of connection, it's a huge privacy issue.
In his article, Lincoln says, "There's literally no reason I can think of that I would want my phone to check in with Motorola every 9 minutes." So, John, can you offer up any explanations for why a company would require such data?
No, actually, it appears that they're collecting information just because they can, and you agreed to it, and that's one of the big issues here. There's really no reason why the phone platform really needs to grab this much information that often. Not when the arrangement is, here's a phone, use it. This kind of information grabbing with that kind of regularity, it's troubling, and it indicates that it's much more is going on than quality control, or they're trying to refine the platform. This is an information grab, and they're taking it, and it's a big issue.
Do you see this as a case of user ignorance when it comes to device terms and conditions and privacy policies? Or is Motorola at fault for failure to disclose this information to the smartphone users?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of both. I mean, clearly that's going to change now. For what it's worth, a lot of people don't read the things that they agree to when they start to use the phone, me included. There's just a lot to read through, and you don't realize the amount of data that you're agreeing to. And this is not the case in every case. It just seems like they've actually done what you've agreed to in this case. But now that this is getting out, you can expect that there'll be some blowback here. At least I hope it escalates to that point. to Motorola to get an answer on what they're doing. They've been pretty sly about this thus far, and this doesn't happen just by accident. This wasn't designed by accident or engineered by accident.
Mhm.
Oops, we grabbed all this call info. Oops, we grabbed all your passwords and things like that. They knew what they were doing, and wrote it up as such ostensibly when you agree to it, and it's something that they're going to have to answer to.
At the crux of Lincoln's claims is the notion that Motorola's mobile services, commonly known as Moto Blur, which is used to push updates to Motorola devices, is responsible for that secret data sharing. And Lincoln says that one of the reasons he chose the Droid X2 is because that model does not use the Moto Blur UI. However, his research indicates that the phones have been modified to silently send data to or through the Blur web service backend. So, can you explain how that behind the scenes operation is working? How it's not connected to the UI, yet it's still working with it?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. One of the things he discovered was even though that phone doesn't actually use the Moto Blur UI, that the phone is actually using a randomly generated Blur account for all of this behind the scenes activity. So even though it appears he didn't agree to or use the actual mechanism that is doing this, is being pointed at as some of these issues, being behind it's actually still using that same account information. It still has that aspect, the blur integrated, and it's using that to actually send the data.
John, we're discussing a smartphone here, but could you put this issue into perspective for us? How would a similar scenario look, and how could it play out on a user's desktop PC?
Yeah, well, the example applies to anything from tablet to a smartphone. That's the big question. Is when you put it into perspective, and you look at like if you were to go out and say a couple of years ago, go out and buy a Dell, like a laptop or something like that. Then you discover later on, after you've been using it, have been using it for a while and using it for your data and your social and all this different kind of stuff, that Dell had actually put in like modified versions of Windows, everything from Outlook to Internet Explorer or your File Explorer or whatever, and without telling you at all, or making you agree to things that they know you're not going to read, and all of your passwords and all that different thing are being sent back, not to Outlook, not to the web provider or Facebook or whatever, but actually going to Dell first. So that'd be a giant issue, and you would be pretty upset about that. And so it's something that kind of puts it in perspective for you, that really makes you take a look at how bad is this compromise of security and the kind of this trust thing. So when you look at that from a perspective of taking this example from desktop to a phone to a tablet, it really it's pretty clear that something pretty egregious has happened here.
Now, is this currently only an issue with the Droid X2, or is there a known list of other affected phones?
There is a good list. It's currently, as far as the phones that we can point to that have the Moto Blur in place, there's a long list of phones. In fact, it's almost everything: a Droid X, a Droid 2, 3, Bionic, Razor, which I have. It goes on and on and on. There are newer phones that don't exactly have Moto Blur, but as we were able to tell, there was definitely this account that was created that was doing the action on the back end. So it's unknown. He didn't test every phone, and I think that more people will go and say and look at this and try to simulate this test to say, to verify some of these facts.
Mhm.
But to verify which phones actually are also experiencing this issue.
Lincoln writes in his article, the biggest question on my mind is this. Now that it is known that Motorola is collecting this data, can it be subpoenaed in criminal or civil cases against owners of Motorola phones? John, what are your thoughts? Do you think Motorola could feed this data to the NSA, as Edward Snowden claimed is the case with other tech giants like Google and Apple?
It's quite possible this is related to that and that mechanism. This could be a backdoor for those purposes. It's really hard to say, and we'll have to get an answer from Motorola on what actually is happening here. I mean, it certainly could. This info is pretty extensive. The forensic value is off the charts in terms of all that it captures, and you could find out a lot. I mean, about without even recording actual calls or grabbing actual emails, you would know a lot about what a person is doing, where they are, when they're doing it, and so on and so forth, just from the metadata that comes off of the phone.
Before the weekend, we reported on Motorola's major marketing campaign for their latest smartphone, the Moto X. Do you think news of this secret sharing operation could potentially thwart users from purchasing that new device? And is there a chance that that new device could hold those same privacy concerns?
There's a good chance that that might be true. Motorola hasn't put out a major phone in a while, and if this gets big enough, I think there could be some real concerns, and it may force Motorola slash Google, who pretty much operates Motorola now, to actually step up and actually make a statement on what they're doing and why they're doing this, and whether this device is something that's affected by that, or what the case is. Again, it's hard to really pinpoint a reason why a phone platform provider, a device provider, would really need to grab this kind of information. But they're doing it, and they're doing it regularly. It's not just when you check in, when you update. No, it's none of that. It's every 9 minutes, and it's grabbing all kinds of information, and it's pretty far-reaching.
Motorola has not officially responded to a request for comment on this matter. John, do you think that they'll respond in any regard?
I believe that they'll have to. I think that if this starts to escalate, I think with all the attention going on with the NSA, I think that they will respond. I think to the consumers potentially, to people that have any kind of holdings in Motorola. But I think that further, with everything that's going on, there's certainly a lot of people that will be looking for, to uncover things. Perhaps through some type of congressional, review, or something like that, as these things are starting to come to light on how exactly the alignment between, the private sector is feeding information to the government, the CIA, and exactly how that's happening. Is this another prism? Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't think it's on that scale, but it is a big grab of information that's coming from a whole lot of handset users, and this appears to be a mechanism in which they're doing a lot of data collection. And is it connected? I guess we'll find out.
Well, John, privacy is certainly a very hot topic right now. We really appreciate you taking the time to have this discussion with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And you can start your week off right by getting in the know on all the latest in tech news. Your SiliconANGLE Daily Roundup fills you in next here on News Desk.